Very cool. So myself, Renee with Middle and Middle Out, and yourself is Paul with the band, and I think I'm Cognizant. So
That's correct.
yeah. Well, thanks for
Yeah,
joining me today. Talking about the new album that you have coming out in about a little less than a month, at the 24th, right?
that's it. Yeah, it comes out on the 24th.
Very
Pretty
cool.
excited about
Yeah, I'm sure. For the title Upheaval, is there any specific meaning for this?
it. Yeah, I think we like the concept, first of all, because it has to do a lot with the lyrical content, but also, upheaval relates to the change that we all went through with our lives, because we were putting this album together while the pandemic hit, and in the UK it was pretty strict. It was pretty full on. Um, so yeah, it was kind of that process itself was a way to cope with that. So at least for me, but I'm sure the others will echo that.
Yeah. Now, when did the writing take place mostly all of 2020, or did some of it take place of 2021?
So for the most part, so I joined the band in 2020, early 2020, and by that point, most of the material had been written, at least in demo form. I think there were about 8 songs, and then I joined and wrote the other two. So I think a lot of the work during 2020 and 2021 before the recording um, was mostly putting it together and kind of like trading ideas, because it's you get a basic structure of the song, but then you let them mature a little bit. You get other people's opinion on it in the band, and so there was a lot of back and forth. And luckily, because we all have like some form of a studio setup in the band, it was very easy to collaborate and smooth in that sense.
Very good. Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of bands, unfortunately, can't make it to a studio, but because of technology, you're able to record at home, send the tracks back and forth, and work on it that way.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. It's really good. It's awesome that like technology is enabling that, um, uh, and with the writing process, it's really important. But even just putting music out, you've got everything you need. You just need a laptop nowadays, and maybe if your music's good enough, it will shine through the imperfections.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I know. I've seen. I mean, I don't do it anymore, but I used to play guitar back in the day, and I've been looking at programs that are like, for the drums and stuff like that. Like I've been seeing some advertisements. Of course, you get the algorithms, and you see advertisements for like Get Good Drums and some other
Yeah,
ones. And I'm thinking maybe,
it's a good time to be a guitarist or a musician. It's awesome. Back in the day when I was like really young, I used to just write drums in Guitar Pro 5, I think it was. And that
yeah,
took ages, and it was just straight up MIDI sounds. And now you
yeah,
can, with a few clicks of a button, you just have amazing sounding drums, bass. You're going to have amazing sounding guitar at some point soon. The programs will get that good.
yeah. We're eventually going to just kind of become obsolete and just pushing buttons.
Yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah.
the human form and imperfection will always be valuable. So
Oh
I,
yeah,
I embrace technology, if it's you know, and if for some bands sounding robotic and sterile is a thing in itself and it works for them, so that's cool. If it's a stylistic choice, it's cool,
yeah,
So
yeah. But I've been listening to this the new album that you have coming out for the past few days, and there's a lot of groove in it. There's a lot of technicality in it. At some point when you're writing music, do you think of um, how difficult it may be to play live as to when you're recording?
um, I think for the most part, and I'm speaking for myself, but I think Alex would agree with this to some extent because we've discussed it before. I don't think so. First of all, the technicality and the difficulty in playing those songs is definitely a part of the Cognizant sound, but it's never our aim. Our aim is always like the musical idea. We try to be, we're a death metal band, but we want to be a musical death metal band. So if there's some technicality or difficulty, it's there because it's supporting the musical idea behind it. Some of the stuff, some riffs I've written, like in Oniric or Fever Dream, that's kind of like difficult, and there's a riff or two in there which I was like, let's make this fun to play. Let's push the envelope and push myself.
Yeah,
But for the most part, none of us sit and be like, think about it too much. I think it just comes naturally. We like technical music. But yeah, again, the end goal, if it sounds good and if it serves the purpose, we do it. That's why, as you said, there's a lot of groove. It's not just like straight up technical death metal.
Right, and that's what I like about it, because there's a good balance
Man.
between the technicality, but you also have some melody in it, some groove in it, to where it's a good balance, to where it's not just like 320 beats a minute, for the whole time.
Yeah, totally.
You're
No,
like, yeah, you got some ups and downs, but it makes a good flow for the album.
I'm glad you think so, man. I really appreciate that, and it's our goal. Again, we want to be a musical band, um, and I think a lot of bands in this genre tend to have, and it has been. I mean, when Necrophagus came out, and early Faceless and a lot of tech metal bands, it was like a thing. Being uber fast and technical and difficult to play was a thing in itself, and that was awesome. But I think since then, there's a lot of bands that fall in the trap of just, as you said, straight up technicality, and um, you need a bit of, you need some groove in there, or you need some melody or some sort of hook. If you're just going to be a brutal tech death metal band, that's fine, but find a way to make it musical, not just you know not just technical proficiency. It's not enough, I think, for me personally, when I listen to metal.
Right. And I mean, that kind of puts a pitfall in the music. If it's too technical, then the music just all sounds the same. You want the fans to be able to, I mean, number one, you have to enjoy it as the artist as you're playing it. But for
Hmm.
fans listening to it, you want them to be able to recall, oh, this is this song, where they can hum to that song, as opposed to, you're like, okay, well, this is just completely fast, and you're like, it just sounds like the last one, and there's no differences. It makes it, I mean, some can pull it off, some bands can pull it off, but not
Sure,
many.
sure. Yeah, I totally agree. You need the hook. You need in some sort of way, beyond the wow factor, listen to how crazy this is. You need some connection, emotional connection to the music, and to provide that, something, as you said, it could be a hook, it could be a groove, uh, whatever it is, but there needs to be something. And I agree with you there.
Yeah. What are your first, talking about, you've had some singles released, and one of the first ones with that Syntheticus 2, if
Hmm.
that was the first one, right?
That's
And
correct. Yeah.
Claymation was pretty cool. Where
Hmm.
did that idea come from? Did y'all have that idea for that video, or did you trust the production company, the director is like, this is the idea that I have, and let's work together on it?
So this idea primarily came from Alex, the other guitarist, who wrote the lyrics for this song. So most of the lyrical content. Alex wrote most of the lyrics, but I wrote some as well. Um, they're either inspired from movies or books for me personally, or any issues like that. So with Syntheticals, there was quite a strong idea, and it was discussed among the band. We would like to do a claymation video, and we'd seen some of Shane's previous work, and we were very impressed. So when we went to Shane, there was an idea of a concept. This is what the story's like, and this is what happens. But he brought it into a life of its own, man. He did an amazing work, and we're so happy with the outcome. And he was very easy to work with, and yeah, it was a fantastic experience in uh, every part, and we're really happy with the outcome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And old school claymation, that took forever to do. I mean,
Yeah,
is it
yeah, yeah.
this that takes forever?
It does. Yeah, I think he was like, because he was sending us snippets. He was very communicative, which was awesome. And I think because he was also a fan of the band, he put in a lot of, like, effort and passion into it. And I think you can see it. But it took him, I think he was working, I could be wrong, but around 4 or 5 months till, like, we got the final product. Building the sets, building the figures. We're all in the video in some kind of cameo scene, so that's kind of cool. Um, yeah, it took ages. A lot of
Yeah.
work went into it.
Well, hopefully, as people watch it, they'll appreciate that, and remember that claymation itself takes forever. I mean, you got to do every little movement, you
That's
know.
it.
Yeah, it takes a long time, as opposed to, I mean, other forms. just, live like you have on Aeon Sickness,
Hmm.
you can throw that pretty quick together,
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. No, it's a different ball game altogether. And so far the reaction and from the comments, which I try not to read comments with my music in general when I really, but because I'm sometimes I guess, I can be a bit sensitive to it. But just when I first read it, it came out, it was just like really, they seem to be really positive. And from just other people that we've been in contact with and some people that, contacted us, it's been a very good response. So I think Shane's hard work paid off. And it's something really cool that we can look back in, 10 years time maybe and be like, hey, you know,
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when Tool made a claymation video. I don't remember
definitely.
forever ago.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That I'm sure that was because we were talking about it as well. I remember watching those videos, and I always thought even just as a kid on TV, I would see like claymation kid shows, and they had this kind of eerie feel to them. I don't know. I think it's just the style itself. So that lent itself so well with our music, I think. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah.
awesome. We're
Now
very happy with it.
for Aeon Sickness, which was your last single, did y'all get together, or was that video put together to where each one it was, at your own house or whatever?
Um, Sorry, you just lagged a bit there, but I think I got the question. So, yeah, we all got together except for our drummer. So David is in Austria, and because of COVID restrictions, it was difficult for all the band to get together. So what we did is, you know, uh, Alex, Henry, the singer, Chris, the bass player, and myself got together and filmed in the same room. And David did his own, playthrough in a studio in Austria. So that's how those came about,
Oh, okay.
which was
Now, when
challenging in itself. But I think again, it turned out pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. It's always as anybody that plays a musical instrument, you hear the music, but you also want to see how the musician is playing it. Now, are y'all going to be doing any playthroughs for any of the songs?
Yeah. So we have the another single coming out, another video soon, which will be in a similar kind of fashion. And in general, Alex and I have been talking about, David's already done live playthroughs of, he did one song already of Aeon Sickness of just drums, and I think he's going to do a couple more. And Alex and I have been discussing, we would also like at some point um, to do an actual playthrough because the video that we released for Aeon Sickness, we treat it more as kind of like a video clip. The way Alex and I kind of approach playthroughs and we like it is real live audio. We personally, and me as Paul, I prefer that one, even if it's imperfect. So I think there's something that we'll probably get together and do at some point. It'll be just in a room with an amp, actual camera audio, which
Yeah,
would be pretty cool.
yeah, for sure. Now, when it comes down to writing, and you said you contributed, a couple of songs. Do you use yourself? Do you have an idea of what to kind of help you with the riff, or do you just start playing music and then you'll start building off a riff?
So for me personally, I try as much as I can, whatever writing I do, to do away from my instrument. So because I find myself um, a lot of the times if I just pick up a guitar and start playing, which has happened, and a lot of riffs have come this way, but a lot of the time I find myself kind of doing a lot of the familiar things like same scales and things like that. So one thing I try to do is, in general, when I approach music, especially for Cognizance, it's always like a very basic idea, a movement. It could be just like two chord changes that kind of have some impact in my mind. And then I will dissect those and build it into a complex riff. So I think if you listen to, Oniric or Fever Dream as well, which are two of the songs that I contributed when I joined. Even though there's a lot going on guitar wise, if you listen to the actual idea behind it, it's quite simplistic. So I try to do that. I try to write a melody in my head, or I try I have a little keyboard. I'm not very good at piano, but I can find the notes, and that's kind of cool. So usually I do it this way. Sometimes I will just pick up a guitar on the couch, when my girlfriend's watching Netflix or something, and I'll just start playing, and I'll be like, whoop, something will come out. So it's you know, it's a bit of both, but I try to do it away from my instrument. And also one of my favorite composers, who's Nobuo Uematsu, he did the Final Fantasy music. I remember reading an interview where he said the same thing, and that had a lot of impact on me, where he writes most of the stuff in his head, and he will just write it, in notation down, and then go and work it out in his instrument. And I like doing that as much as I can. I don't think I'm as proficient as he is when it comes to writing music and notation and stuff, but it's cool to start with a basic idea in your head, and in the practice of fleshing it out in your instrument, all kinds of extra ideas come out, and it's a cool process. Works for me.
Yeah. And I've heard of other musicians do that too, to where, because now on the phone we can just, hit audio record. But I've heard
Yeah.
them, well, will write like a melody, or they'll hum something, and they'll have their song ideas on their phone, and then they'll go back into the studio or whatever, and then start working on them.
Yeah. Which is cool. Inspiration can strike at any time. Yeah, it's whatever way works for you.
Yeah. And as I was saying that, I remember reading an article. I think Kirk Hammett had lost his phone to where he had
Yeah, I was
thousands of,
gonna, yeah.
yeah.
So we probably lost some really good Metallica songs, or
Um,
maybe intuitively he wrote them again without realizing. That can happen too sometimes, which is again why I like writing as much as I can away from my instrument, because I'm not constricted. I will play guitar and write a riff and be like, hey, that's, it feels really familiar. And once, I realized I was going through my demos that I wrote in 2014 or something. It was like, there it is. So I kind of, that idea stuck with me, and I kind of rewrote it, which is funny.
yeah. Yeah. If it's a good idea, it's weird how the mind will work that way, to where it just keeps popping up. And I've heard
Yeah.
of other musicians too, to where they'll have an idea, and it just, like, for some reason they can't let go of it until they put it out and record it.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
You can obsess over stuff like this. It's happened to me in the past as well.
Yeah. Now, because we did have, we're still in the pandemic, and you probably had a longer period of time to work on this album. Do you feel like maybe at any point, like, y'all were working way too much on the album to try to do too much to it, or, overdo things?
Um, I think so. There's always a tendency to overdo things. Um, I think Alex and I are pretty good at writing intuitively. Like, I know, again, speaking more from my experience, when we write or record an idea, we try to do it instinctively in some way. So, because it's very easy, there's a saying, art is never finished, it's just abandoned. And while I agree with that, I think one of the biggest kind of traps musicians can fall into is the feedback loop of just improving stuff.
Yeah.
So, what I like to do, and what Alex likes to do as well, we try not to fall in those traps. We record a riff, it sounds good, and if it does, that's it. We move on. I mean, we'll take our time and bounce the ideas around, but a lot of the times, usually there will be like little comments we have to each other. Maybe you can add this melody here, or you can add an effect there. But for the most part, when he sends me stuff, I'm like, yeah, man, that sounds pretty cool. And for his input is usually like that as well. Um, Also, another thing about which happened in the album, you always record demos, and when you have the demos ready, you have the album kind of, the songs are there, but the recording process itself is another thing. It's an extra process. So there were a lot of points in the album where at the time, we were sitting next to each other, and I was recording or Alex was recording, be like, hey man, I've got this idea and that sounds cool, and boom, just on the spot we get an idea, implement it, and move on. So there's a lot of little things that came out, and that's one of the cool aspects of recording, and why it's important to treat it itself as a creative process. So yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Now, I know, I don't know if this happened to y'all as well. Has the record been done for a while? Because I've talked to other artists and they're like, yeah, we had it ready since like summer of last year or like fall of last year, and you're like holding on to this jam. You're like waiting
Yeah.
to release.
Yeah, totally. I'm like, even I took holidays because we went to record it ourselves, at least guitar, bass, and vocal track, and we rented a place and went for 10 or 11 days, I think it was, in the middle of nowhere, and recorded it, and I tell my friends and my partner, and you're just like, it's ready, but when it's going to be out? It's like soon, in like 7 months or something. But I think the final mix we got was January this year, or February, I think, from Frederick Nordstrom. So
Mhm.
we've been sitting on it quite a while. But on the other hand, there's such a relief, man, when you get the final thing and listen to it, and yes, this is it, it's done. um, that's the satisfaction you get, and also it's kind of like a relief in some sense that it's done, because it is a big process. It's a labor of love for sure. So I think the fact that it's done is rewarding in itself, but we're still very excited to release it.
Heck yeah. Now, and as you were saying that, I remember, if I remember correctly, you recorded parts in different areas.
That's
Did I?
it, yeah.
Yeah. Now, was this intentional, or that just happens because of where everybody was living at?
So myself, Alex, Chris, and Henry, we all live close to each other in the UK, very close. um, David is in Austria. So the way we did it now, so always, so far, David will record in Austria. He's got a studio there that he goes to and does his thing. And usually the rest of the band members record in the UK. The way we did it this time is that uh, Alex and I primarily took some time off and went to Dent, which is a very small town in the UK, which was really nice and peaceful. It was cool. We rented kind of like a barn sort of thing, and we just took all our gear and set up a studio. And we did guitars, and Chris came for some of those days and did bass. So that guitars and bass were done there. Vocals were done at a different studio where Alex recorded Henry in Leeds somewhere, and that was primarily with everyone's working, and it's hard to get everyone off at the same time. So that's why this happened. Vocals were tracked separately after guitars. And yeah, as I said, David just does his recording in Austria. Um, so that's how it usually works.
Yeah. Now, did recording this bar, did that, you feel like you had any, maybe some kind of like a mental influence in that environment that you in, that kind of added to the music, or was it the sound that you were getting out of the barn?
So it was mostly the place. We wanted to go somewhere, like, first of all, okay, well, just in context, this has been during the pandemic, so we've all been indoors nonstop, especially in our houses. So, one, it was an escape. We wanted to go somewhere far away. We were in the middle of nowhere. It was so green. There was a lot of nature around, which was awesome. So, um, that was the first part. We wanted to be somewhere where it's a very relaxing atmosphere. We can, you can go for a walk. There's, hikes around. There's a little town. There's like all kinds of sheep and horses walking about, so that's kind of cool. So that's the first part. The second thing is being isolated as well helped us focus more on the music. I think if we ended up doing it at my studio or Alex's studio, you're because it's a familiar environment and it's a lot smaller as well, there would be perhaps more distractions. Um, and I think just the idea itself of you separating yourself and going somewhere to do music puts you in that mindset, because you have a purpose. You're going there and you're going to do this, and you're going to be there for 2 weeks and get it done. And I think that really helped. And, I see us doing this again in the future.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, just to get to know you a little bit better, for yourself, you mentioned that you also play guitar. Are you very proficient? And I mean, I would say play drums. You're very proficient in the drums too.
Um, for a guitarist, I'm a pretty good drummer, but like I couldn't compete with David, no.
Well,
But I'm all right. I love playing drums. It's my
yeah,
favorite instrument.
yeah.
Uh,
Now,
I,
were young, did you start off with the drums and then transition
Yeah,
to guitar?
that's it. So I played a bunch of instruments. Like I started on piano. I did like the violin. I did a bit of like the French horn, but there was always like for a few months, 6 months, a year, and I kind of, it wasn't my thing. I didn't stick, but I loved music, so I kept experimenting with instruments. And I think when I was about 10, I was like, I want to play drums because I was into rock music from my dad. I was, um, I loved Black Sabbath. I loved AC/DC. I loved Nirvana. I used to just find records from my dad's
Yeah.
collection. So drums were my first instrument, and I played them for quite a while. I think it was like 3, 4 years. But then we moved to Australia with my mom, and because when I was living in Greece, which is where I'm originally from, we had a studio very close by that I would go and play, and I could go like almost on a daily basis. In Australia, we didn't have that, so it was like, I need to get a kit, and my mom was having none of it. So it was like, okay, fine, pick another instrument, and I wanted to play bass, so I went
Okay.
to the guitar store, um, and the guy there convinced me not to buy a bass. He convinced me to buy a guitar. He was like, "No, man, don't get a bass. Get a guitar, because it's like if you learn guitar, you can also apply it to bass. It's obviously there's different techniques with it's a thing in its own to be a great bass player, obviously. But they're both guitar instruments, and it would be easier for you to jam and get around. So I was like, fine, I got a guitar, and that's how it stuck. So yeah, that's like my story and my musical journey so far. I
Yeah.
do I do have
Well,
like an electric kit as well.
yeah.
That
At
yeah.
least, at least, at least it wasn't a story to where that salesman say, if you play guitar, you'll get plenty of girlfriends and all this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it was really cool. It was interesting. I think like um I don't who knows if I just bought a bass, I'm sure I would have kept going and just be for me, music and playing guitar has always been like some form of release. And because I moved around a lot as a kid, it was it was a good way to just take whatever frustration out, and that's why it stuck. And
Oh yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I remember, like I mentioned, I used to play as a kid too, and yeah, whether whatever you're going throughout the day or the week or whatever, you could channel that as when you're playing and get kind of release those emotions.
absolutely, absolutely. And to be honest, I was very lucky as well. From a young age, when I was in Australia, I found some friends of mine from school who were really good friends, and but we formed a band, and having that connection with someone was something that probably pushed me to be to keep working on, and fueled the fire. And I always wanted to be in a band, a proper band, and play shows and do that stuff. So having some other people with you to push that vision is really important, so I'm very grateful for that.
Oh yeah. So as you started to kind of deep dive into, more guitar, was there any specific guitarists that you're like, holy moly, just mind blown? You're like, I want to try to do that.
Any sorry, guitarists or guitars?
Guitarists, like your influential guitarists for
Sure,
yourself.
sure. So, um, so my journey was from a very, I had the initial, as I said, I found the records in my dad's house was like Black Sabbath, um, Nirvana, stuff like that. But then Metallica came along. That was the first thing. And I remember like on my dad's um, computer, he had like a video of Master of Puppets from the live sheet Seattle, the 1989
Mhm.
live, playing Master of Puppets, and I watched this, and it just blew my socks off, and I was like, holy, you know, wow, that's amazing. That's what I want to do. So it started there as well, and then I started getting into heavier music. Um, I, so I guess Pantera was a massive one. That was like heavier for me, and I really liked, the image of the band, and Dimebag is just like a legend in his own
Oh yeah.
right. Um, then I got really into Megadeth, and I think that was like a step up for me technique wise. Like I still do, I loved, but I still uh, love Marty Friedman. He's one of my favorite guitarists, and I remember trying to learn some of the, his solos and stuff, and that really pushed me, into, working on my technique. And then as I got older and started playing more stuff, then came the wave in like 2006 or 2008 of like the deathcore stuff. That was that was another, like, listening to the first Velo Maya record, Common Man's Collapse, or like Akeldama by the Faceless. I remember listening to that stuff and being like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot of influences, but there's also, because I come from a very musical family, there's also like non-metal influences, like which are still just as important for me music wise.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's good to have different musical influences because that gives you as a musician a broader range to where it'll help your style sound different than the next person.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's all music, man. It's just a different, like, you can still relate to it. That's why you can hear a metal cover of a pop song. If it's a good song, it's going to sound good. Or you can hear a lot of classical music. A lot of metal is very, or used to
Oh,
be, very classical influences. It's still the
yeah,
same idea. So a good melody, no matter what you play it on, the context changes, but it's still a good melody.
yeah, yeah, and just like classical music, like you mentioned, is like, I mean, you can immediately see the Ingwe Malmsteen. You know what I mean? That
Hmm.
transition very easily.
Definitely.
Or I remember people guitarists trying to learn Vivaldi and stuff.
Yeah,
For,
yeah.
so
Or
yeah,
like Bach,
yeah. So it all transitions very easily.
it does. It does.
Yeah. So, getting back onto the album, which is going to be released on the 24th, is there so far any future plans for touring? How's the UK? Has it started to open up a little bit?
So as a band, we're not a touring band, really, because all of us have careers, and David also lives in a different country. Like,
Yeah.
proper full-time touring is just not in the cards at this point. We have been getting into playing live, and our last gig was, it was before I joined, was Tech Fest in the UK, and we are looking into doing some more shows, maybe some, like, festival runs would be cool. Some shows here and there. We really want to play this stuff live. And part of the fun is, if you have such a, you make some music and have an album, you want to, jam it. So yeah, things are starting to open in the UK. We were in a couple of festivals that were cancelled, or due to COVID, David couldn't travel. So that was a bummer. But in general, we do have plans to play some shows here and there. Um,
Very,
yeah.
very cool. Yeah. I've been slowly, of course, shows have been popping up, tours are popping up. I've been seeing more tours in Europe though than the US, which is a good thing for everybody that lives in Europe. So maybe,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It is. It's happening. Like, I think also the UK is kind of late to the party, because a lot of other European countries seems have been open for quite a while. Like, I remember while the UK was still in sort of lockdown or post-lockdown mode, there were tours happening in Europe. So it's cool that it's picking up again, because a lot of people who relied in this, a lot of bands that tour full time, and they rely on this to function. It was a tough time. So I'm glad that it's opening up again, and everyone wants to go to shows. So I think it's going to be a nice little boom of
yeah.
live music. It's going to be sick.
Yeah, it's been. I don't. Have you been to a show recently?
No,
Oh my!
I haven't since the lockdown.
It's been crazy. I just went to go see the tour with the Megadeth, Lamb of God, Hate, Breed, and
Oh,
Trivia. Yeah,
nice.
that was nuts. I mean, the vibe is everybody is just. I mean, finally glad to be back to a show. It's definitely worth experiencing. Of course, taking the precautions and stuff like that. So, but yeah,
Obviously, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's great to be back, and everything's coming back slowly.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
looking forward to it.
yeah. So of course, I always try to, tell people if they're able to buy merch from the band, that way to try to support the band. Anything else the fans can do to help, Cognizance, as once release date comes around?
Obviously, if you're a fan of the band, like, buy the album, man, in digital or physical copy. It really, really helps, especially the first week sales. And the most important thing, however, if you support the band, spread the word, man. That's, I think awareness of the band is the most important. And it's cool. We're like our fan base seems, from what I have seen since I joined, very dedicated. We have the response we get is really awesome. So, thank you to everyone out there who has been supporting us. And yeah, we hope you're gonna like the album. It's been a labor of love. We think it's our best work so far. It's more mature. We've it was planned better, it was recorded better. So I think it all translates really well. So if you like our music, do whatever you can. If you can't afford it, then just tell your friend to check us out. That's enough.
Stream it, share it. This social media,
Absolutely.
anybody, anything other than the company selling your information on the side.
Yeah, that's that too. But I guess it is what it is.
Yeah,
Um,
little
you
trade
know,
off.
as long as people enjoy it, that's why we do it. Again, even though we are a live band and we're planning to do more of it, we still all have careers. So for us, it's truly what we do with Cognizance is um, something that we're really passionate about. And if people enjoy that, then there's nothing more rewarding for us. Honestly, it's really cool to see people digging the music and having such a positive reaction to
Yeah,
stuff that we do. So thank you to everyone watching. If you support a Cognizance, cheers.
yeah. And it's going to be mind blowing to where something that you recorded is going all over the world. And it's
Yeah, it is. It is. It's really cool because you're so attached to these things. Like if you write music, it's even before it gets in its final form, it's been in your head. You've been practicing it, doing all that stuff. So like to see someone relating to it and being excited, or even sending you a message to tell you how much they enjoy it. That shit's incredible. It's really cool. Um,
yeah,
so yeah.
very cool. Well, Paul, before we finish up, any last words of anything else that we haven't covered? Anything else you would like to promote for Cognizance, for yourself? Anything else?
Nothing really. I just want to say thank you very much for the interview and for the opportunity. It was great to talk to you. And
Or
yeah, album comes out on the 24th. Check it out, whoever's watching, and let us know. Let us know what you think of it. We'd love to hear feedback.
hell yeah. Well, I'm enjoying the heck out of it. And I was one of the fortunate ones. I'm going to be able to enjoy this a little bit more before anybody else. But yeah, it's definitely a must pick up. And like I said, I like how you vary the music, and it's not just like again that 320 beats a minute nonstop. You have a good variety, and you change it up very well, and it flows really well. I'm really enjoying it.
Thank you, man. That's really, really encouraging to hear. So we really appreciate that. And I'm glad you like the album.
Oh heck yeah! Well, Paul, again, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great release date
My
on the 20th.
pleasure.
Either way, somebody picks up the a physical copy, digital copy, stream it, whatever they can to get the word out.
Thank you very much, Reen. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Take care, man.
Take care. Bye.